Hello, how are you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Leicester Tigers 23, Clermont Auvergne 16. The game has just finished in the Champions Cup. I've just been watching it on another interesting day for the competition over the last couple of weeks. I'm going to get into that game. Big win for Leicester. They've gone 2 from 2. Clermont Auvergne, they get the losing bonus point, but they weren't able to back up their victory last week against the Stormers. Remember, if you're new here, do subscribe to the channel, like the video, and drop a comment down below, particularly about this game. What did you make of it? But also the competition more generally. How have you seen it over the first, what's it been, week and a half so far? All right, let's get into it. Leicester 23, Clermont 16. A deserved victory for Leicester based upon the 80 minutes. Clermont will be pretty glad to get a losing bonus point because for a good hour of the game they were pretty much dominated. But it was an interesting match because the first 10 minutes Clermont were very, very good. Then they fell away and then they had a final flourish where they scored a try of the last player of the game to get themselves that bonus point. Also coming into this match, both sides had won their opening games in the competition, so that added an interesting element. And for Leicester in particular, they beat the Ospreys last week, but they made 8 changes for this game at home against stronger opposition in Clermont compared with the Ospreys. So that just shows how much of a, not quite second string, that's probably a little bit harsh, but it was a weakened side they played a week ago, and it was a much stronger side they played today in this game, and they eventually got the victory. And Steve Borthwick, speaking to BT, which is the broadcaster over here in the Northern Hemisphere, said that it was a chance for them to grow. It was a game against a better Clermont side than they faced last year, a chance to see how they were able to develop their game and grow after the victory against the Ospreys. And I think they did a pretty good job overall. Clermont, as I say, the first 10 minutes, I thought Clermont looked really, really good. Their kicking game was good. Their line speed was very, very strong as well. And you thought that Leicester were going to be in a real game here. And all right, the final score was quite close in the end with Clermont getting the bonus point. But it was overall, if you watch the game, quite a comfortable victory in the end for Leicester. Because after about 20 minutes or so, Clermont's discipline just deserted them. And they were giving up field position, they were giving away territory, they were giving away possession. And Leicester, after that point, really were able to capitalise on it. Clermont also, they had a couple of substitutions early on. 2 men in their line-out had to be substituted. Don't know how much of an impact that had. Certainly the line-out, you wouldn't say had a huge bearing on the game. I know that Leicester scored a couple of tries from driving over mauls. But even so, I'm not sure whether that disrupted Clermont. They had to make those substitutions pretty early on. But Leicester, after riding out the early pressure, they went 6-0 down. They then were able to get themselves back in the game with Jasper Wiese, who was awarded the Man of the Match award. He scored the first of those tries. Poor first-up tackling from Clermont, which I think is where they will be frustrated with this game. Even though overall they were outplayed, they had a good first 10 minutes or so, a very disciplined first 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then that kind of deserted them. Their tackling disappeared for that first try. Their discipline disappeared, as I've mentioned already, and Wiese, anyone who's watched the Gallagher Premiership knows what he brings with ball in hand. Was very, very effective, bursting through off the back of a line out, crashing through 3 tackles and finished on the right-hand corner. And then also Montoya scored the try from the driving line out. Such a weapon for Leicester. But really, again, it came because of Clermont's mistake. They had a pretty poor penalty for blocking in the build-up to the penalty, which Leicester kicked towards the corner relatively near the end of the half, and they got another try on the board. And as I've said already, it was that Clermont discipline which really disappeared and allowed Leicester back into the game. And credit to the Tigers, they took their opportunities when they got them. As I mentioned, the changes as well, and also a yellow card on 35 minutes for repeated infringements, which just goes to show how much that discipline became an issue in the second part of that first half for the visitors. Accumulative penalties, and it was Thibaut Lannan, I hope I've said that name right, who was sin-binned around the 35-minute mark. So it was 17-6 at half-time. And then Leicester kind of continued where they picked off. There was a couple of moments where Clermont had the ball in the red zone in that Leicester 22, and Leicester had really good defence. They were able to put pressure on at the breakdown, and Clermont were penalised for holding on, got the turnovers. And after those early moments in that second half, Leicester went on. They actually scored a try, which was picked up for a forward pass. And this was an interesting moment because the forward pass was after Clermont kicked it. Freddie Stewart collected the ball just inside the Clermont half, and then his pass was forward as they shifted it to the right-hand side. And Andrew Brace, the referee, after Leicester had eventually scored that try, following that moment, said it was within 2 phases, so therefore they're allowed to go back and check it. Austin Healey, on the commentary that I was watching, was adamant that there had been 3 completed phases, and therefore the TMO shouldn't be allowed to go back and check that. Bit of a technicality in the game, and I sympathise with Austin Healey and Leicester there, because I must admit, you often see it, don't you, when tries are scored, the TMO going back a long, long way. It's supposed to be, I think it's 3 completed phases, then they're not allowed to go back and look anymore. I haven't actually seen a replay. Austin Healey had seen replays, and on the, as I say, the pictures I was watching, he was adamant that there had been 3 completed phases and they shouldn't be allowed to go back and check that. That is sometimes a frustration of mine, because if we go back far enough, you're always going to be able to find things which will give you a reason to rule out tries. Anyway, it ended up not mattering in the end, but I think that is something that at some point, that's going to be a really interesting debate. We're going to have a game, probably a high-profile game, and that's going to be a turning point, a discussion point of whether the officials should be able to go back that far and have a look at things. On this occasion, it didn't matter, but that would have been Leicester's 3rd try. And then also, I've mentioned it already, but that Leicester defence on 73 minutes, Clermont bursting through, Newsom it was, who got himself over the line. It was phenomenal covering defence from the Leicester Tigers to hold him up. Those are just a couple of moments that I probably picked out, that I jotted down as I was watching the game. There's probably other things that you could go into as well. But as Steve Borthwick said before the game, it was a chance for Leicester to grow. And actually, their scrum was under pressure for quite a lot of the match. But that didn't matter for Leicester. I think, given the fact that they haven't started the Premiership season that well, they've been okay, haven't they? I think they've won the same amount as they've lost, and they've got the draw in there as well against Bristol. So they're a side that haven't necessarily been consistent. They haven't been hitting the heights that they were a season ago when they ended up winning the Premiership, but they've gone 2 from 2 from Europe. It sent them to the top of the pool for the time being, admittedly with a number of games still to go in this round of fixtures. But I think Leicester are in quite a good place. The question now is going to be, is that going to be Steve Borthwick's final game in charge of Leicester? The RFU in negotiations with the club, that seems to be dragging on a little bit. So when it comes to the Christmas period to New Year, is Steve Borthwick still going to be in charge of Leicester? I guess only time will tell. We shall wait and see. But for the time being, they've started Europe really, really well. Let's see if they can kick on from this now and where they go for the rest of the season. I think that is going to be fascinating. As for Clermont, I think they're still a good side. They got themselves a losing bonus point, which, as I said, for a side that were outplayed for a lot of this game, is pretty good going away from home in the Champions Cup. So the way it works with the pool stages and 8 teams qualifying for the knockout stages, they're still in a pretty good position after their victory over the Stormers a week ago, but they've still got a bit of work to do when it comes to qualification. As I said at the start of the video, do subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Also like the video and drop a comment down below. Let me know what you made of these 2 sides, but also the competition so far as a whole, and any games we've seen this week. And I know there's an awful lot of Champions Cup rugby to get through, so let me know. I always enjoy hearing from you. All right, I'll see you in the next one.